Good evening and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for the City of Warrenton for March 3rd, 2016. Our first item on the agenda tonight will be public hearings, and the first item on public hearing will be the Fairground Villas site plan for Plan Unit Development 91A. Mr. Hanth, if you'd like to bring us up to date on that. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. First item we have is Fairground Villas site plan approval request. It's SP-PUD 91A. Property is located at 608 Fairgrounds Road. Property is Zone C3 Highway Commercial. I'd like to ask to make part of the public hearing record the municipal code by reference, public hearing notice, and my planning and zoning report. On June 18th, 2015, a request was filed for a preliminary site plan for a planned unit development with senior citizen apartments to be located at 608 Fairgrounds Road. This request was presented and postponed at the July 16th, 2015 Planning and Zoning Commission's meeting. Although it's not a requirement, the city decided to go ahead and hold this additional public hearing for the benefit of the applicant and the residents of the community. And there is representatives here from Allied and NECAC, if you have any specific questions for them.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hanf.
You're welcome.
All right. At this time, we will take comments from the public in favor of or voices of concern for that public hearing. Mr. Corman?
Yep. For the record, Mark Corman with Lewis & Danny Surveyors and Engineers. Also have Mike Marty and Carla Potts with one's the owner under contract. Here to answer any questions that anybody may have on the site. Jack kind of explained the summary, and I can go on a long time tonight if you really want a long meeting, but I'll just answer any questions that anybody may have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Corman. Please step to the podium and state your name, please.
I'm Vic Bushler. I live at 505 Fairgrounds.
And how do you spell your last name?
M-U-S, common spelling. M-U-S-C-H-L-E-R.
That's exactly the way I would have spelled it. Thank you.
First, we'd like to say that we do support the development. We don't have any problems with it at all. We do own 13 acres right at 47 and Fairgrounds. Our concern is the stormwater runoff, the land disturbance permit, and I don't have any direct knowledge as to how it's planned, what the SWPP plan says or anything. We just want to make sure that it's handled properly. My experience has been, if there's a problem, such as a severe rain event or something on the weekends, there'll be no way to control it. And since our lake's going to receive all of this stormwater, we want to make sure that it's taken care of properly. And if we can get some assurances from the builders, the developers, we would appreciate that. And that's all we really are concerned about. Because I got to tell you, my experience has been horrible. Because if something does happen on the weekends, we want to be able to get it dealt with, because our lake is going to be affected by it. Okay?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mushler. And is there anyone else here to speak on behalf or in opposition to the proposal? All right, we'll close that public hearing. Our second public hearing is again for Fairground Villas, in this case for conditional use permit for PUD 43A. And again, Mr. Hanf.
Yes, sir. This is a conditional use permit approval for Fairground Villas CUP-PUD 43A. I'd like to ask to make part of the public hearing record the municipal code by reference, my plan zoning report, and the public hearing notice. Once again, on June the 18th, 2015, a request was filed for a conditional use permit approval for planned unit development with senior citizens apartments to be located at 608 Fairgrounds Road. This request was presented and postponed at the July 16th, 2015 Planning and Zoning Commission's meeting.
All right. And again, now we'll open the floor for anyone here to speak on behalf of or in opposition. And Mr. Corman is back, of course.
Mark Corman, Lewis and Beatty Surveyors and Engineers, same as what I said before. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. And any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, we can close that public hearing. And then finally, our final public hearing is for Section 425 sign regulations, ADM 81.
This is a proposed text amendment to Section 425 sign regulations, ADM-81. I'd like to ask to make part of the public hearing record the municipal code by reference, our planning and zoning report, and the public hearing notice. This is in response to a moratorium per ordinance number 2263 and a request from the Board of Aldermen to review our existing sign codes specifically regarding window signs. But we're having the public hearing on the entire section in case there's any other areas that you feel needs to be addressed at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Hamp. And is there anyone here that would like to speak on that issue tonight? Signs are exciting.
I'm Pamela Pargin. I'm the district manager of the O'Reillys here in town.
And again, can we get the spelling of your last name?
P-A-R-G-E-O-N.
G-O-N?
G-E-O-N.
G-E-O-N. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
And we were just wondering, I mean, obviously, O'Reilly's been in town for 4 years. And recently, we had gotten requests by the code enforcer to take down our signs. We went through several different scenarios as to what we could change, what we could do. Obviously, it's a cost factor for us to take down signs, put them up, and then when the ordinance come back to us, it was stated that we could have like 11 by 7 sign. Obviously, they're too small. When we got to checking around town, obviously looking at our competitors, the other stores and stuff, seeing that they're allowed even bigger static clings, we were just in question as to, okay, why all of a sudden? 4 years, I mean, we come in, nothing was said, nothing was stated, hey, your signs have to be so big, and then now we're asked to take them down. It's like, okay, we need a little bit more clarification as to why all of a sudden and what is the next step. Are we going to continue to stick with the ordinance you have and no longer be allowed to have, you know, the size static clings we had, or, you know, are we just going to go with nothing at all? So that's where our concern stands.
And you say you got a lot of other stores in different towns.
I do.
Is
I
it-
have 9 stores.
Okay. Is there any other town that's brought up something like that to you?
In Wentzville, with them doing the parkway, you know, with all the new businesses and everything that's coming there, they actually had a city ordinance to where the static clings, the size that they have, we're not allowed to have them. But with me doing, you know, servicing 9 stores, none of my other 9 stores, I go from Vandalia, Bowling Green, obviously here, clear to Maryland Heights. Wentzville, and obviously now, the Warrenton location are the only 2 locations that we're not allowed to have the static clings in there. And, you know, we have stores in the metro market, St. Louis, everywhere, and we do not have any ordinance that state, you know, you're not allowed the static clings that we use at this point. Some of them have to where they're a little bit smaller, but they're still substantially bigger than the ones that, when we got the information back from the code enforcer, or however y'all work that, the little 7 by 11 signs, you can't even see them from the road for, you know, our customers and stuff to even see the advertisement, so it's almost not even worth having them up. Okay,
All right.
thanks.
Anything else there? All right. That concludes our public hearings, and we can now move into the open portion of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. First item on the agenda will be the minutes from the February 4, 2016 meeting.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the February 4th meeting as submitted.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Scott, second by Commissioner Deitch to approve the minutes for February 4, 2016 as submitted. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? All right, roll call vote.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Colum?
Abstain, I was absent.
Mr. Scott? Or I'm sorry, Mrs. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Burton is absent. Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Gerloff is absent. Mrs. Blondin?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
And I will abstain, I was absent. So by my math, was that 3 abstentions?
No, just two, isn't it?
Just two and two.
Just two. All right. So we have two abstentions, and we have 1, 2, 4. All right. Passes by 4 with 2 abstentions and 2 absent. All right. Interesting math tonight. And we have now the minutes.
Wait a minute, did your math just add up?
And one vacancy.
And 1 vacancy. Actually, it's 4, I'm sorry. It's 5 to 2
Okay.
with 2 absent and 1 vacancy. And so motion passes. Now we'll have minutes from the February 15th, 2016 meeting. Again. Who's next?
Oh, I'll make a motion to pass it.
And I'll second it.
All right, motion by Mr. Durbin, second by Mr. Deitch to approve the minutes for February 15th, 2016 for the work session as submitted.
Mr. Cullen?
Abstain, I was absent.
Mrs. Scott?
Abstain, I was absent.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Blondin?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
All right, and that one passes by 5 to 0 with 2 abstentions and 2 absent and 1 vacancy. All right. Next item on the agenda is the Warrenton High School Band Boosters Mud Bog Special Event Permit number 19. So at this time, I think we have our organizers here. So Mrs. Scott, if you'll come forward.
Hello, I'm Linda Scott, president of the Warrenton High School Band Boosters, and I'm here to ask for my 5th annual Mud Bogger. It's a fundraiser for the band to get stuff that they need, and right now we're needing a second trailer. Our band has grown very big. So, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
All right. So you've seen the request. Any questions or concerns that you've got, you can pose to Mrs. Scott.
This is basically the same setup as what you've done before.
Yes, the pit has just been moved to a permanent location over into the, in between the motocross track. And it'll actually make it even that much more safer. You're 75 feet now away from the edge of the pit to where we were only 50 feet away. So now we gained an extra 25 feet as well. Mhm.
Okay.
Nope, I just always know it's spring when you show up.
I am here. All right, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? All right, you know what comes next.
I'll make a motion to approve the mud bog as submitted.
I'll second.
All right. So we have motion and second to approve the high school band boosters mud bog permit as submitted. Any other questions or concerns? All right, roll call vote.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Blondin?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Cullen?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes 7 to 0, 2 absent, 1 vacancy, and that does come before the Board of Aldermen, correct?
Yes, on March the 15th.
All right, so,
Thank you guys very much.
thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
You too. All right, next item on the agenda is the site plan for Fairground Villas Plan Unit Development 91A. And as Mr. Hanth described that during the public hearing, we've got the details. You've got all the materials in front of you, and Mr. Corman is here to answer questions on behalf of the developer.
And I'm going to abstain from these discussions as my daughter-in-law's on the board for NECAC, so I'll go sit by Mr. Hank.
All right.
Sorry.
You ready for a question?
Sure, I'm ready.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. The question he had about the water, we might as well bring that up.
Sure, sure. If you look at the site plan, the southeast corner is a stormwater retention pond. It's actually going to be a wet pond for aesthetics as well as for stormwater detention. We also, through the construction plan process, will have to get a land disturbance permit from the state one from the city, as well as have a SWIP plan out there. All those require erosion control methods as well as regular inspections and repairs. So it's going to be enforced by DNR as well as the city. So the good thing is most of this stormwater during the construction runs off to the retention pond that the fire district built about 2 or 3 years ago. So there's one extra precaution before it would get to the Gentleman's Lake. Some of that is going to be bypassed by a sewer line that's not going to be upstream of that. So there's going to have to take some extra precaution from a contractor to make sure that's done and properly control the silt and erosion control. I'm hoping that the contractor that's on site will be able to comply with that, which they're supposed to, as well as if anybody downstream has issues, we'll make sure that there's a phone number or something to call the contractor. Hopefully we can do that, so that there's some communication if you do have issues. If not, I know the NECAC office is a number that's on the plans here and stuff too, so they can call, because Carla will be overseeing it about the contractor. So I think we're in pretty good shape there, but working with the fire department previous and stuff, we know that is a sensitive issue in that location.
I'd also like to let Mr. Mussler know, we did pull up the drawing for you.
Oh, thank you.
That would be helpful.
So
And there-
I do have a quick question on where's the retention pond at the fire department?
You're talking about the one across the street from my lake?
Yeah, the retention pond at the fire department is directly behind the helicopter
Oh,
shed.
okay, I don't know about that one.
That's one there, and so most of this water will drain that direction and go through this detention pond, and then it'll go through the detention pond of the fire departments, and then go out through the ambulance district down your direction.
Well, I appreciate that and everything, and our main concern now is the land disturbance permit.
During construction.
Because, yes, the silt fence isn't gonna cut it, but the rain events we've had in the last year, you've been around a while.
Yeah.
And I have too. That's my main concern, is we don't need that silt and mud, because it'll take out that lake. But we're already struggling with an urban lake. You know, we have problems anyway, we're dealing with high nutrient levels and everything. And, I'm not so sure we can even handle much more water at all, but with that said, I hope your engineer and plans took into account our lake.
It's, the city requirements are a no net increase of runoff for the 10 and the 100-year storms. And actually, if you look at our detention report, we actually even analyze the half-year, the 2-year storm, because it's a more frequent storm. Even though it's not required by the city, we do take that into account when we try to design it, because that's the storm that occurs more often, that affects people, quite frankly. And is probably more important than the bigger storms, because when you get a 100-year storm, everybody's flooded out. But yeah, we've taken that into account.
Thank you. Yeah, we would appreciate it, number, sometime down the road. I mean, it's probably out tonight, but you got our address.
And I just want to point out that during the course of construction, you know, the city building department does monitor, and they do enforce those types of rules and restrictions. So I think as a general course of action, we would suggest that individual property owners not be in direct contact necessarily with a builder, not that you can't, but that the city is there to address those issues, so you can bring those issues before to the building commission.
Sure, I understand that. Again, our concern is Friday night, we got a severe storm, and there's nobody to respond to deal with it. Now, those penalties are about $37,000 a day. Plus, the law allows for a citizen suit to be filed above and beyond that. We don't want to see any of that happen. And my experience has been, again, the silt fences and things like that aren't always effective. So we've expressed our concerns. We trust you. we're trusting Jack. I've already had a conversation with him about it. So I think we're satisfied as of now. We'll be monitoring it closely.
Carly, you want to say something?
I'm Carla Potts from NECAC.
And can we have you come, just for any future commentary, can we have everyone to the microphone, just so that when this video is viewed by others, that they can understand everyone?
I just...
Thank you. And your name again?
Carla Potts, P-O-T-T-S, and I'm with NECAC. And we have our contractor here tonight, Doug Hudson, and I'll have him talk to you afterward and give you phone numbers and everything too, because we certainly want to be good neighbors too.
Great. Like I said, we do support it.
Thank you.
Obviously, we're just concerned. Sorry, I should have said that.
Okay,
You'll
all right.
figure it out. Thank you.
And I also want to stress, like what Mr. Costello stated, not only when they get their land disturbance permit from the state of Missouri, there's rules and regulations they have to follow. There's also rules and regulations that they follow with the city, which involves weekly inspections. And after each, what's considered a major storm event, they have to do inspections. So that gives us a tool where every week we know, is all the silt fence in place? Do they have extra erosion control methods in place that are working? Is there some that's not working that we can address and be on top of before you have a problem where you have an abundance of silt coming into your pond? So our goal is definitely to protect not only the applicant and their site, but the surrounding properties.
And we appreciate that. Thank you.
And you can always call the non-emergency 911, and you can leave message with Public Works if there's an issue like that, and then the Public Works Director can get a hold of me if he don't have people on site, because they have people 24 hours a day, year-round. If it's something they can't address immediately, they can always contact another city staff member.
Great.
As an option if you're concerned for the Friday night fiasco.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. What other areas of concern that any of you have? No more discussion or questions? All right.
Waiting for somebody to make a motion.
I'll entertain a motion.
I
Absolutely.
enter a motion that we accept the, is that what we're going for, the building of the
Yes.
building permit?
Right, this will be the site plan.
Site plan,
Yes.
I make that motion.
All right, motion by Mr. Durbin, second.
I'll second that motion.
All right. And so we have a second by Mr. Schwab to approve the site plan for the Plan Unit Development 91A as submitted. Any other questions or comments?
No.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Blondin?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Cullen?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott abstained? And Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
All right. So that motion passes by a vote of 6-0 with 3 absent and 1 vacancy. And I think Mrs. Scott will remain where you are, I guess, for this next item. So the next item on the agenda is the Fairground Villas conditional use permit for Plan Unit Development 43A. And very much the same issue, but
Right, pretty much.
conditional use portion.
Yeah, it's zoned highway commercial C3, but it is multifamily use, so that requires a conditional use application. And so the site plan falls into the same situation scenario here. So, and then we went with the PUD because that's kind of the working method now for an item like this. So this combination's here. It's 40 units on a little over 5 acres, which is about half the density that's allowed by the requirements for multifamily. So answer any questions that you may have on the conditional use.
So what questions or concerns do we have here now with the conditional use permit? And this is the part of the approval process where, as the Planning and Zoning Commission and then ultimately the Board of Aldermen, some limitations and restrictions can be put in place for the good of the community.
And I would like to add that the applicant did submit their covenants and restrictions, It's been forwarded to the city attorney. As of today, I've not received his comments back. So in your notes going to the board, you might want to displace that the covenants and restrictions are reviewed and approved by the city attorney prior to approval, because I've not received his response yet, but they did submit them on the 24th.
When do you anticipate that you might have those?
Let the record reflect that Mr. Hanf is unsure.
The city attorney has them, so I cannot verify his schedule.
But we can expect that they'll be back in time for the
I would
Board
say
of Aldermen.
comfortably before the March 15th meeting. I'm confident in Mr. Gravel.
I do have a question, and I think this is probably one that NECAC is probably best able to answer. And if I can find it here, there's a clause in Exhibit B on additional restrictions that references that there will be 5 units set aside for residents with special needs, and it gives a specific, it doesn't give a specific definition, it just refers us to where special needs definition can be found. Can you describe what the special needs residents would be? And my concern and reason for asking is I just want to understand if this would place any additional financial burden on the city or the county, depending upon what those needs might be.
What we gave you was the land use restriction agreement for our current property, and that property has 5 units set aside for special needs. This property has none. The LURA will follow this, the land use restriction agreement will follow this one exactly, but that will not be a clause in it.
Okay.
And we don't sign the land use restriction on Fairgrounds Villa until we would close. But we wanted to give you that this is a sample land
Okay.
use restriction agreement. But that paragraph is not applicable to this property.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
What other concerns or questions might any of you have?
I would just like some further clarification about the transfer restrictions. In other words, in 20 years down the road, if you decide to sell the property, what kind of restrictions will be in existence as far as who buys it and what becomes of the property at that time?
It is a 30-year land use restriction on this property, so for the period of 30 years, this property could not be sold. It would have to remain senior housing for the period of 30 years.
All right, so you're saying, if I understand correctly, that it will be senior housing only
Correct.
for 30 years?
For 30 years. For 30 years. This agreement, the land use restriction agreements that's signed with the Missouri Housing Development Commission, is a 30-year restriction. Yes, and it cannot change. And I can't tell you in 30 years because I don't plan to be working, but we have properties that we've had for a long time, and it would not be NECAG's intent to ever bring it out of existence as senior housing. But 30 years, it has to be.
And I had similar concern on that, and I understand that. So the Missouri, is it the Missouri Senior Housing Commission?
Missouri Housing Development
Housing
Commission.
Development Commission, and NECAC both. That's the intention. The one concern, looking down the road, is that while we wouldn't expect or anticipate that either of those entities ceased to exist, there's no way to guarantee it. The other thing is there's no way to guarantee what the legislature might do 10 or 15 years from now. No disrespect to Mr. Corman, of course, but it's at least conceivable that some of those things could be changed legislatively, and for that reason, I would feel more comfortable if our conditions carried with it that same restriction even if the state, for one reason or another, were to lift those restrictions, that they would continue with the property. I don't know how the rest of you feel about that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, and even if MHDC went out of existence, these covenants and restrictions would remain in effect, because these are tax credit dollars and they're governed under Section 42 of the IRS code. So even if they go out of existence, but for 30 years, we've signed, so if you make that same restriction, we're okay.
Right.
We're okay.
It's just additional protection, I think, for the community.
Sure, sure.
Any other
Do we
comments?
need to make that as an addenda to this, or?
Well, typically, when we consider a conditional use permit, we just state what those conditions that we're recommending the Board of Aldermen would include to be, and so we'll leave it to Mr. Graville and city staff to put it in, I guess, a formal language, but as long as we understand the intent of what those conditions are.
Could our conditions be longer than 30 years?
They could certainly be.
Perhaps we ought to ask people that live in the area if they would be more comfortable with something longer than 30 years.
I'm comfortable with the way it is right now. The state has already implemented it and things like that. I don't think the city needs to add anything else into it, but I do respect the fact that you're willing to protect us a little more. But 30 years is probably longer than we'll be around. Might be my kids' problems.
So far at this point, one of the conditions I understand would be that the review of the covenants and restrictions be completed by the city attorney, and that any recommendations or revisions recommended by the city attorney be agreed to as part of the Board of Aldermen's consideration. And then additionally, that the 30-year requirement that this remain a senior housing development should also be a condition within the city's approval of the conditional use permit. Are there other conditions or concerns that anyone else would add?
No.
Well, we could talk more, or we could make a motion.
Somebody can make a motion. I'll make a motion, we accept it.
All right, Mr. Durbin makes the motion, and a second from?
So moved.
From Mr. Deitch to accept the conditional use permit with the condition that the review of the covenants and restrictions be completed by the city attorney for the city of Warrenton, and any recommendations or revisions be then considered by the Board of Aldermen. And the second condition, that the use of this property shall be for senior housing for the 30-year duration.
Senior housing only.
Senior housing only, yes, for the 30-year duration of the, I guess, the state, is it the state and NECAC agreement? Is that, you guys can, I guess, more finely word it than that, but that's what we need. So.
Conditions 1, conditions number 2.
There you go. Anybody have any other questions, concerns, comments? All right, roll call vote.
Mrs. Blondin?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Cullen?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott abstain. Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
All right, so that motion passes by a vote of 6-0 with 3 absent and 1 vacancy. And it will come before the Board of Aldermen at their March 15th meeting.
Thank you.
All right. We can, and thank you to all of you for your time on that. It's been a long time coming. All right, we can now move on to item 6, which is the section 405.285 Planned Unit Development ADM 80 discussion. We took that discussion up at the February 4th, 2016 meeting. And Mr. Hanf has given us some updated language and some amended terms, and I think all of you had a chance to see and review those, so now's the time to talk about what you like or don't like. Don't all talk at once.
Well, I have to confess that my computer is now only giving me the mud bug, so.
Would you like to,
Mine died too, so.
well, we can all get on my personal hotspot, that's what I'm running off of.
It didn't die, it just refuses to go anywhere.
Okay, it's on life support, but mine
It's
died.
something. Yeah, so, you gonna pull it up for us?
There you go.
Basically, what you have is I put together, I took the existing code and made, my proposed revisions are shown in red. And I've also highlighted in yellow any section of the existing code to be deleted. And I came up with this with the notes and the conversation that we had during the February 15th work session. And in your packet, you have the notes from the February 4th P&Z meeting and the minutes and notes from the February 15 work session. And Mr. Graville has reviewed and approved this proposed section of code with no additional changes to what I sent him.
So the proposal addresses all of the issues that were discussed in the work
Yes, ma'am.
session and puts those into.
Puts them in the code. And Chris reviewed and approved it without making any additional changes or comments.
I do like the fact that we've got the clause that we can bring in technical personnel and consultants to review things such as traffic counts and density, stormwater, et cetera. And of course that the applicant gets to pay for those analyses. But that's been something that, as we've looked at similar concept developments in the past, that we've struggled with, because we know we want to have some certainty about the effect of those things, but we don't really know how to identify where the tipping point is to have whatever traffic counts are too high, or whatever occupancy levels are too high, or things of that nature.
And also, as requested during the work session, there's several areas where it specifically states that it's a site-specific, case-by-case basis. For instance, you may ask for additional buffering and landscaping or different areas, but it allows not only the Planning and Zoning Commission, but the Board of Aldermen to really look at each site specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And they can ask for additional requirements, or they can waive some of the requirements to really make this a site-specific approval process.
Looks pretty good to me.
How did we, I was looking and I have not identified it, the question of proximity of one planned unit development to the next, because we had that concern of how close one can be to another. And I know that there was some mention of that. I can't find in the language how it was addressed.
I believe I have that in there more in the buffering area, because it didn't appear that anybody had a specific dimension that they were wanting to keep them apart, although the city attorney said we definitely can, as long as it was a reasonable distance. So since we really didn't have a suggestion of what you guys thought would be reasonable. That's why I put it in there in the buffering section that,
Okay.
you know, you can require additional buffering. So if there's two stacked together, you can make sure, well, because there's one existing already, we need additional buffering
Okay.
between these two sites to try to address it there.
Okay. All right. What do the rest of you think?
I think it reads pretty good too.
Fine.
I don't think it reads like John Grisham.
Like John Joseph.
Yeah, that's right.
It's also got some timelines in it that are pretty specific.
Do we have any other comments or concerns? If not, we can forward this on to the Board of Aldermen. You need a motion to do that.
I give a motion that we do that. Send it on.
All right, we have a motion by
As
Mr.
submitted.
Schwab to approve the changes to section 405-285. Need a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Durbin. Any other questions, concerns, comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cullum?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Blondin?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes?
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. 2 absent, 1 vacancy, and the Board of Aldermen will take that up on March 15th. And finally, we have the discussion for Section 425 sign regulations, ADM 81. The ladies could have stayed. All right, Mr. Corman, have a good night.
Oh, man. This is in response, like I said, to a moratorium per the Board of Aldermen and ordinance number 2263. I've, in your packets, the entire sign, section 425 sign regulations. I've highlighted in yellow the section specifically regarding the window signs. And then I also have highlighted in green any section of code that puts size limits on it for your convenience. And this came about, the city received a written complaint regarding window signs. And code enforcement went out and checked the areas where there was per the written complaint. Several courtesy notices were issued. There was not very positive feedback. And when the board decided that there's probably time now to look at our sign code and see if we can, if it needs to be updated to make it more current. I do understand some of the people's concerns that receive the courtesy notices. Right now, you can only have 20% of the glass covered on a window sign, and the majority of the businesses get their signs from corporate. So if they don't install the signs that corporate sends them, then they get negative marks and that on their inspections. And you know, yes, there were several of them that was discovered that got the courtesy notices. In reality, the window sign has been more of a complaint-driven item in code enforcement. It's not really the highest priority of, is that cheeseburger too big in the window type deal. So hopefully, you guys can take a look at that and see if there's a way we should modify that section of code, or if you think we need to leave it as is.
We definitely don't need to leave it as is. I can't even walk into a place without somebody yelling at me for that one.
Well, now's the time to take care of it.
Jack,
We might
what-
want to swap it around where they can use 80% and leave 20, but
What was the nature of the complaint? Was it the size of the sign, or?
That they were, it was specific that there was a violation of code, that there was more than 20% of the window covered.
What,
I guess I'm having a little trouble in my own mind trying to determine, you go into an establishment, how do you tell what percentage of the window is covered by,
We physically went out and measured them,
but I mean,
code enforcement.
How do you visually make a complaint against someone to say, wait, that sign's at 20?
A couple of them, it was obvious.
I was gonna say, you can look at a window and tell if half of it's covered or not.
I know you totally can, but to actually go formally place a complaint with the city about, I'm just wondering if it was something that was just spiteful from one business to another, or if it was actually someone who's concerned with the code and how it's supposed to be enforced.
that's my point.
Yeah. Well, I think you may be right that there may be some ill intent there. There's no way for us to know, but there's possibly some ill intent there. But city staff doesn't have the ability to pick and choose when they receive the complaint. They have to go verify, and as Mr. Hanf said, it's a complaint-driven enforcement. So honestly, I would imagine that most of the businesses that have used these types of signs in their windows never really had any understanding or idea that there was even code that applied.
Right.
And then the Pamela from O'Reilly's was here. O'Reilly's has a sign permit for their big signage. It was submitted and approved exactly like you should for code. It was just the window signs that was put up. And the complaints specifically referenced completely different types of businesses. So it didn't come across like it was a competitor complaining about two other like competitors. The ones that was addressed were about as far apart on types of businesses as you can get.
Does
Are
the
there other
city staff
complaints?
have a recommendation
There was,
at this point?
Excuse me?
Do you have a recommendation at this point about size?
Do I? No, sir.
he didn't want to stick his foot in that one, do you?
Well, I'm
The
saying,
Board of Aldermen requested that the Planning and Zoning Commission look at this section of code.
all right, what about a business that blocks the window completely with some kind of a screen and mannequins and so forth? What's the purpose for having just nothing larger than 20%?
I could not answer why that was part of the code. It might be, I don't know if it'd be anything as a safety item or a security item, if an officer's looking into a building or something, why they would have come up with the magic number of 20, but honestly, I have no idea where that came from.
I'm saying that if a business could put a display in their window with some kind of a screen and mannequins, so that in effect it takes up the full space of the window, that's not a sign, but it does block so
You
that
get
it,
into the store.
And the business could also have shades, blinds, or whatever else that completely block 100% of the viewing area, and those would not
Or
bring any more
monitors.
enforcement.
LED monitors, you see that a lot where they're blocking way more than 20%. There's really not a window, they're using it as a marquee.
I'm just boggled what the purpose of, if it's my business, I want to block my whole window. I mean, if the officer wants to come in the door and say hi, and look around. I don't.
My thought would be that it maybe has something to do with visual clutter. And if I have a glass front store and the guy next to me has a brick front store, I believe one of the things that was highlighted was that 15% of a building can have a sign on it if it's a building.
Up
if
to
it's
150 square foot.
Up to 150 square feet. If it's a glass front, they're saying 20%, which is a little higher than the brick front, but not exceedingly higher.
The 15% would still override that. If the entire front of the store was glass, the 150 square foot would override whatever the 20% calculation would be.
Right. What I'm saying is I think the original purpose probably was to just not to have it so cluttered that it was just a visual nuisance, nightmare, whatever.
Well, I know we had a tremendous amount of of business owners that was very upset. I mean, we're talking about almost over the top upset. Luckily, we didn't have the meeting that day because they would have probably stormed the doors in. I mean, this is unbelievable how upset the business people of this town got over that particular ordinance.
Well, it might be good if they were here to tell us
Well, a lot of
what
them-
is accept, what are they really looking for?
They're looking for, I said you could do it the opposite way, but they, because like if you look at the auto zone and O'Reilly's and stuff, that's a major part of their advertisement. Even the hideout up here, they just had some signs put up, and they were not that big of signs, but they were way over the 20% limit. 20% is just such a
But I think you have
small
to.
amount of the.
I think part of the discussion has to be, what are we going to allow on buildings that don't have windows in them?
If you don't have a window, then you don't have a problem.
15%
You do
up
have
to
a problem, you
150
can
square
only
foot.
put 15% up to 150 square foot. I think.
So that's 75 by 75, right? Is that the side of a building is that 150 square feet? Is that 75 times 75 equals 150 square feet? Am I doing?
10 feet by 15.
10 by 15.
Okay, I don't know how to do math.
Or
Okay,
10 by 15.
other
Yeah,
proportions.
it's
10 by
very
15,
small. Matter of
yeah.
fact, some of
Yeah.
the signs that I've seen put up they almost look ridiculous. They're so small compared to the whole size of the building. Like Ledbetter's sign, for one thing, when he changed his over to
Yeah, I
a
saw that.
sign. It's such a small sign that it almost looks ridiculous on the building because it is so small.
That district has other specific limitations, I think, because it's at that old R4 or whatever we call it now. So that stretch has tighter sign restrictions because of the residential commercial mixture, and that's a special zone that
Mhm.
has rules that don't exist in any other zones in the city.
And I don't really think we can sit up here and say, well, let's go 50% or let's go 75%. I think we need, here again, I think we need some information either first from some other areas, what do other places do?
Well, and you say that just thinking as you're driving, and I'm driving down through in towards St. Louis. If I stop off at a fast food place, the windows are all covered with stuff. And that's consistent. It's not, it's not from here to down on Lindbergh. Anywhere I stop, if I stop, a lot of the stores are definitely gonna be above the 20%. So, no, I totally agree with what are some of the rules and regulations that other people in other cities.
Apparently, she stated of all her stores, only Wentzville and Warrenton had the ordinances that
Limited.
And I would caution to say that factually, she might have only been addressed by Warrenton
Well,
and
that's always-
Wentzville
yeah,
so
that's
far.
possible.
I got you.
They may have that section of code.
Okay,
They just
Same like
don't.
this particular instance.
okay.
That's been on our code for a while,
Mhm.
until we received this complaint. I didn't have to send my guys out and specifically look at every business's window signs.
These are just businesses, right? In other words, if someone would come in, if I would go down and rent a building downtown and decide I'm going to open a church there and cover my front window with some kind of a
Revival.
sign for my church,
If it's signage, the same rule would apply. That's why we had to change the whole section of sign code like 2 years ago, the 8th District Circuit Court. You cannot regulate by content or type. So it wouldn't matter if it's an advertisement for a church or a cheeseburger or a carburetor
okay.
Or a garage sale.
or a garage sale.
Okay, I remember the attorney stating that's part of it, is that law right there that trickles down, right?
Well, that's why you can't specify that it's
Mhm.
okay for
Okay,
this
I
group
remember
to
that.
do this, but
Right.
this other
Not
group
okay
cannot.
for the
And
others.
I would
Does
also like to add
those can.
a comment to what Mr. Durbin said. Yes, this kicked a hornet's nest. In a way, it might be a very positive thing because it's brought it to the surface. But I think we need to really thank the Board of Aldermen that they immediately took action at their February 2nd meeting, informed me that they were going to do the moratorium and that we were gonna look at changing the code, and on February the 3rd, the next day, my guys were out hand delivering the letter that's in your packet to every business and explaining to them. I think the city really went out of their way to explain to them, yes, this was a problem, yes, you got a courtesy notice. It wasn't a notice of violation, it was a courtesy notice, and yes, the city's looking at addressing this issue. So I think the board and the city really responded great to a problem that surfaced. So if you do speak with other businesses, I hope you remind them of that, Dan, that we did our best to respond as positive as possible.
Yeah, I definitely notified them that the alderman jumped in there immediately and put a moratorium on it. And there was some people that didn't know, but, and some of them had already, to quite a bit of expense to their particular stores, had taken them down before they got the notice, but.
And technically, they were in violation.
Yeah.
That's the only reason they would have received a courtesy notice.
I just think we need to look at what some other places are doing, and I do think we need to take into consideration the balance between I'll give you an example, is like the store where Stewart's used to be is all glass front. Brewski's is 2 doors down, and it's not glass front. So if you say that the one can cover their windows 80%, but the other is still at the 15%, you're creating some disparity there too.
Well, no matter what, it would be 15% of the frontage, whether it's brick, glass, plywood, whatever.
So
that's for the outside sign, right, is what you're talking
well,
about there?
the window signs is included in the total calculations.
Total signage
Is
15% of all
150 square foot or up to
front
15%. So
Could be a banner, could be
it's
whatever.
consistent no matter what.
It is now. But
For
if
our
you're-
code, yes.
But if you're going to do something different with the glass and the primary, if you're gonna say you can cover half of the glass and all of your storefront is glass, then you're changing that.
But you can't cover, if
They
all
still
of your
couldn't cover
storefront
more
is
than
glass,
150 square foot.
you can still only
or
do
15%.
15% of your total storefront, whether it's all glass or where it's all brick or it's some combination, because the maximum total frontage signage is 15% of the front elevation. It's just when you get into the window signs only that no more than 20% of the window can be covered under the current ordinance.
But we're looking at changing that.
Right.
So if you change that so that more of the window can be covered, what you're saying is we would keep the 150.
Well, I mean, that's up to
Square
the Board
feet.
of Aldermen and whether ultimately we, and all of us as to whether or not we want to change that, but, you know, and I can tell you that, also having a business location in Wentzville, that, you know, Wentzville has specific limitations on, how much of your building frontage is allowed to include signs. And, they also have some limitation, and they similarly have restriction and limitation on how much of your glass can be occluded by signage. I mean, not that our code has to mirror theirs, there's certainly no reason why it has to, but, you know, if your building is 100% glass on the front and the total front of the building is 30 feet wide by 10 feet tall, so you've got 300 square feet, you can't do more than 15% of that, whether it's glass or whether it's brick. No more than 15% of that can be signage. If I've got the same size building, 30 feet by 10 feet tall, and mine's all brick except for a couple small windows and a door, I can similarly only do 15% of my frontage as signage. It's just that I have far less ability to do window signs. You could do all of yours as window signs, you just still can't exceed the 15% total building frontage.
And so is that where the issue was coming in? The total 150 square feet?
I believe the issue was that the majority of the people that received the courtesy notice was upset that our current code only allows 20%
of the window
coverage on the window.
So they're okay with the maximum number of square feet?
There wasn't a survey or anything done. They received the
There
courtesy
wasn't a
notice
complaint about
because of
that.
their window
Because
signs.
Right, because that wasn't addressed. I mean, that didn't come up. The only thing that came up was.
If they had
window.
other signage that would have exceeded that, it would have been included in their courtesy notice.
All right, I just think we need to get a little bit of guidance.
I do think that it's important that, from a fairness point of view, going back to that example, you and I have identical size frontage buildings, one's almost all glass and one's almost no glass, and we are in competing businesses next door to one another. We should both have the opportunity to put the same total amount of signage up, as much as the city can allow that to be the case. But the characteristic differences between your glass building and my brick building, I don't have as much glass. I can't demand that, since I only have 15 square feet of glass even available to me, that you can only advertise in 15 square feet of glass.
Right. No, I understand.
I don't think I should be able to do that.
If we're looking at the total as well as what's included in the glass,
Right.
Well, the problem we have then is, we got a lot of these places coming in and they're cookie cutter buildings. All the AutoZones look alike, all the O'Reillys look alike. And so when we're talking about a huge corporation here with tons of stores, when they make their advertising up that they put in the windows, they're all made a certain size and sent out to the people. So if, we have a too restrictive ordinance for the glass, then we're really putting a handicap on each one of the stores. They had to cut down there.
But I would say that you're not handicapped, to use that word, I guess. You're not at a comparative disadvantage to any of your competitors in the same community, because you're all living by the same rules. You might be in a comparative disadvantage to a similar store in another community that gets to put more signage up. But in this community, I would think the important thing is that everyone has to adhere to as close to the same rules as possible. I think Teresa's point that, there does become a point after which the signage is unsightly. There's some community standards that I think we can ask for. The world's largest retailer, most of their stores are cookie cutter in nature as well, yet there are certain communities that have far more restrictive rules and regulations. Some communities don't allow pole signs. All the signs have to be ground signs. Yet that doesn't keep the world's largest retailer from going into those communities if they feel there's something, a marketplace there. So it's okay to have ordinances and decide what our values are and what we want our businesses to look like. It's just that we need to apply the same rules across the board and let everyone know in advance. But whether 20% or 50% or some other percent is the right number, I can't really begin to guess.
Well, I know the 20% number definitely is not a workable number for just about any business I've talked to, and I said most of them are way over the 20%. Even with the ones that just had the small signs in their windows, it doesn't take much to get over 20% in a window. Like, you almost put your numbers up in the top of one window and you just about took care of your 20% and you got no room for anything else.
Yeah, again, some people driving by that would, see, $99.99 in big giant letters that occlude the whole front of the building might think, that kind of looks not attractive. And we have to balance their interests against the interests of the business owner that wants to shout that $99.99 as loud as he can. I don't know what the number is, though.
How about, could we get maybe an example from, maybe Troy, which has a downtown area as well as...
We can, but history has proven every time I look up multiple cities, every one of them's usually different, but I can gladly get you any information you want.
But if we had several to look at, and it's cities that we drive through or could drive through, then at least we can say, okay, so that's what that looks like. Or you would know that 100% is obviously nobody's going there. You know, you at least have a place to start. What's that look for?
I just don't, I mean, I could look, I can give you any city's code you want, I just don't really know what value there's gonna be.
Is
But I
there a
will gladly do it for
correlation?
you.
Are you able to discover annual written complaints that a city has had related to signage versus what their percentage is?
You can turn in a sunshine law request.
I don't think too many people get too many complaints about how much sign's in the window. Most people don't even look at a business unless they're wanting something specifically from that business.
Or is that just part of the societal norms now, that everybody's just used to seeing the sign? And this
Yeah.
might be the outlier case whenever most people it's a non-issue.
I think it's something that we gotta be careful to be putting too many restrictions on, because I said we're hurting for businesses, period, in the city, and to make it any more difficult for
I
people
don't
we
think a
have here.
business is gonna decide whether to come to the city based on the percentage of.
Believe me, there was a whole lot of people that were so upset about this sign thing they got. Who, not talking about AutoZone or any place like that, but they were so upset that they got bothered again by the city of Warrenton that their next thoughts were, maybe I should put my little mom and pop business someplace else, so.
I just don't think that's there's a market here that people are here to serve, and I don't know. I think if you've got a business that's doing a profitable business in a community, you're not going to pull up stakes and move to the next town and lose the opportunity to serve the business in the community that you're in. That doesn't make sense. I can believe people said that, but I don't believe that there's.
But you also got to look at the factor that when we do things like this, we have other people outside the area, they're all talking, and they say, maybe we should not put something here. That's what else you got to be worried about, is what businesses are we getting a bad reputation because of some of the things we do to keep people from coming in here and starting a new business.
Well, again, I think that the people that open businesses where they see opportunity. And I think Teresa's point that sign ordinance is very little, if any, of the opportunity. The opportunity is the rooftops and the residences and the clientele that can frequent your business, whatever that business is. And again, as long as all of the businesses are bound by the same sign ordinances, there is no comparative advantage or disadvantage. And we allow signs for all of our businesses. But to have every business along Highway 47, the windows 50% occluded by neon signs advertising 99-cent fast food deals and cigarettes and beer and whatever else, while each of those business owners thinks that is the thing that's going to bring people in their door, it's only to the extent that they can do it in a more noticeable fashion than their competitor next door. So my belief is that we just have to find a number that is workable. We'll try to be cooperative for the businesses that need that ability to advertise, but recognize that being able to cover 100% of their windows is not going to bring them that much additional business to make or break them.
Whatever we come up with, I think we have to have a rationale for it. And for the life of me, I can't think of any rationale for saying 20%. So whatever figure we come up with, I think we have to have a reason. And right now, I'm at a loss to determine what kind of a reason we would tell a business owner, well, you can only use 30% of your window to invite the public in, make the public aware of what you have, or you can only use 50% of your window space for that purpose. It's fine to have the regulations and the rules, but I think there has to be some rationale behind it. If we don't have the rationale, then the rule becomes arbitrary.
Would the thought be to not specifically address the windows and just leave it more to the total frontage? Where it's 15% of your total frontage, and if you want to use your 15% up on the bricks, fine. If you want to use the 15% on the windows, fine. Or if you want to use it as a combo.
When I'm thinking of a business that has 2 or 3 windows, and you give the total frontage area of 10 by 15 banner, or I can use it for this window and this window, I think you're giving a lot more opportunity with that methodology, rather than saying 20% of my 3 windows, which is 3 little strips here that I get in each window that really has no value overall from any distance.
It might allow more flexibility, but still have whatever.
It shouldn't be regulated so they can't have a sign that covers their entire front of their building, but putting little number signs or 99-cent or whatever in the upper left corner of each window because you've only got 20%. I think that overall gives more flexibility to the business.
Has the chamber said anything about this? Would it be worthwhile asking the chamber?
The board?
Chamber of Commerce, our local Chamber of Commerce about this.
They have not contacted me in any way, but I could sure try
Well,
to
I'm
get their
saying,
comment.
at least theoretically, that's the organization that represents the business community. Yeah, if I had a business and I wanted to advertise whatever it was in my business with a sign on my window, I probably would not be happy if the city came and told me, well, your sign is too large. I'd want to know, well, what's your reason for saying that my sign is too large? Other than just arbitrarily saying it's too large.
It's hard to make that
Well,
argument would go with any
I'm looking
violation,
for a
any
reason.
code violation that you have.
If you even want to regulate the windows, that's what we got to make up our mind for.
Well, that's a good question. I'm not saying that some regulation is not needed, but I'm looking for a reason. Why are we doing it? And Teresa brings up a valid point when she talks about unsightly clutter. We have enough unsightly clutter as it is now in Warrenton.
Well, that would be a reason then that you regulate the signage on the windows.
Well, I'm not speaking only of windows, I'm talking about a lot of things
Right.
in the community.
I don't think you want to walk or drive down and see 100% of your faces of your buildings covered with signs. So there has to be a regulation. But
That's why you still have the 15% of the total surface area.
and I would be okay with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good fallback, is that then you can take the window occlusion question completely out of play. You know? And-
But then
and
here's
maybe-
your allotted space.
Maybe that's the thing to
Use
do,
it
is
as
for
you
us,
wish.
for 6 months, for some period of time, 6 months or whatever it is, to completely, continue the moratorium. And
It's for 90 days.
Or not, well, but for whatever period of time that it's necessary to determine if this is a workable solution, is to say, we're not concerned with whether it's, how much of a window is covered with signage. We're simply looking to standardize signage in general, and we're going with the 15% of total building frontage, and just leave it at that.
I think it would have to be more than that. Then I think you would have to start raising up the amount of, 15% is such a small amount when you start looking at the window advertising.
Every
that they
business
have
in
down.
town that's in existence is subject to that,
But
but no one said one
That's
word
their,
about that being too
Yeah, but that's their
low.
outside signage. None of them even expected the inside signage as far as the windows go. There's none of them expected the window thing to come up.
Well,
They go by
correct
the
me if I'm wrong,
signs.
but aren't the window signs all placed in a manner to be visible from the exterior?
But they don't classify, everybody classifies the outside of the building and the inside of the building. And when it comes to the windows, they don't classify that as their 15%.
Well,
And if we
But
start,
I
I
think-
mean, if we start regulating that,
You're
It's
saying that they're
included
doing
in the
the,
calculation.
you're saying that they're doing the outside, but they're like, well, I can put something on the outside of this window, and I
No,
can put
not the
something on
outside.
the inside of this window.
No, we're talking about the outside of the building.
Outside of the building.
Okay.
He's talking
all
about
right,
the
I
outside.
was like-
See, they get 15% of the outside of the building that they
Right.
can put a sign on.
Mhm.
And most of everybody around here, the inside of the building, they don't comprehend that that's gonna be part of the 15%. Because that means, I mean, that's an extremely low number, especially when you get most of these places, and that's how they advertise when you go into.
but the window signs
O'Reilly's.
are not advertising for the inside, they're advertising for the people on the outside.
Right.
And so it's still visible signage that whether it adheres to the inside of the window, it's intended for those that are outside the building. It's outside advertising regardless of whether it's inside the window, and it's intended to advertise to those people that are passing by. And so for that reason, it actually puts businesses with lots of glass and businesses with virtually no glass on an equal footing as to how much message they can put out there.
You know, I just don't agree that we should limit them to such a small amount.
And I disagree with you.
Yeah, we can agree to disagree.
We will.
I'd still like to see an inquiry with the chamber.
Okay, I can see, for the next meeting, we can have Michelle here and she can present it, because she's a member of the Chamber of Commerce. So she can, I'll see if she'll get them facts.
Could you
for us.
also bring us some of what some of the other towns do, I guess, while we're at it?
You
And
want
I
to
would
list me
like-
who you want, you guys promise to read it?
Let's
If
try
you send-
Washington, Troy, and Wentzville.
If you send us
Wentzville's got
the
the most
condensed
restrictive.
version,
Yeah, if you send the whole thing
Condensed,
out.
yeah, very condensed, but,
Because sometimes I wonder,
Well,
when I do
basically-
research, if you guys
basically
really
what-
read it, because we start doing this when the meeting starts.
I read everything, but I was hoping to have this to refer to for the discussion, and I didn't.
But I will gladly get surrounding cities.
I think
Sign codes.
all we want to know is the total, like what they're looking for, what they'll allow for a total, and what they'll allow on the windows.
yeah, whether they're two separate.
Yeah, you
But
don't
if you're
two
looking
separate
at-
have to pull it all, if you just find percentage total and for the windows, does that make it easier or harder for you?
Well, I have to read their code, so whatever
but
you
we
guys
don't.
want, I
You
will
do.
gladly get for you.
If you do Troy, Washington,
But we will have a pop
Wentzville,
quiz.
Wentzville, we know Wentzville's probably got a pretty restrictive one, so. we can
and
go by what
possibly
they
even
have.
O'Fallon.
Yeah, we could do O'Fallon. Just throw it on Jack, he's got plenty of time.
just stay with the original three, that's.
Okay,
fine.
that's fine.
Yeah, that's,
Who's your three?
Washington, Troy, and Wentzville.
and with you said there was a moratorium or cease for 90 days.
Yes, it's in your packet.
So
Well,
when
that'd
we-
be-
Yes, but can that be extended?
The Board of Aldermen can choose to extend that, yes, sir.
So with the findings,
The current one expires on May the 16th.
so with the data findings and then looking and then talking to Chamber of Commerce, then we could submit something to the.
I can have this back to you on the May 7th, or the April 7th P and Z meeting, and then it could go before the Board of Aldermen on May the 3rd, which would fall within the 90-day moratorium. If you make a decision on the April 7th
Because that would
meeting.
mean that we have data, we have feedback from local businesses, and we could have something to present, and if they say, well, if we recommend, let's do a 90-day trial to see if this works better for the local businesses, then they could extend it after that.
Yeah, I'm still looking for a rationale for whatever we come up with.
Visual clutter.
Yeah.
What I think is visual clutter may not be what business people would regard
As visual
business,
clutter.
you know,
Right,
as clutter.
but so you have to come to a happy medium.
I agree.
Sound like a plan.
Okay.
All right, so we're taking no action on that. Is it necessary to table this?
Yes.
All right.
So moved.
Second,
Motion by Alderman Scott, second by Commissioner Scott,
And-
second by Commissioner Deitch.
And could we get?
Former
that-
Alderman Scott.
Could we get that data one day earlier in the Dropbox, so it would give us that full day to study what you provide us, to make sure that we read it before the next meeting? No, I'm
It's always
just-
in
just-
the Dropbox the Friday before,
I'm just
but
kidding.
if you would like it on Thursday, absolutely.
No, no.
I was
Just
thinking about
giving you
Wednesday.
grief.
No problem,
Tell you what,
sir.
you're gonna be really good at the next limbo party, man. You can really go back.
All right, so we have a motion to table this until additional information is available. Any other discussion or comments? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Blondin?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deach?
Yes.
And Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
All right. The motion passes 7-0 with 2 absent, 1 vacancy, so it's tabled until further notice. And that's all we have. We can close the meeting and ask Mr. Hand if we have any other news.
Nope.
All right.
Well, look forward to
Excellent.
getting that information for you.
No other businesses applied recently or anything going on?
Nothing's come across my desk. I don't know about licensing upstairs.
All right.
There's
Anything?
potential.
Any other
No.
questions, comments, concerns? All right, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
And Mr. Beach and Mrs. Scott moved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.